the ordinary woman next to me, and the secret that shocked me. It was just another ordinary morning, or at least that's what the narrator thought. The city was waking slowly, cars honking in the distance, the smell of fresh coffee drifting through the streets. He was used to the rhythm. The same streets, the same people, the same rush to get somewhere, anywhere. Life had a predictable pattern, and he liked it that way. He noticed her for the first time on the corner of a small cafe. She was standing quietly, her hands wrapped around a warm cup, her eyes focused somewhere far beyond the bustling street. She didn't stand out in any particular way. Her hair was tied back simply, her clothes plain but neat. Nothing about her screamed extraordinary. She blended into the crowd like any other face. But something about the calmness in her eyes made him pause. He didn't usually notice strangers. He was the kind of person who moved quickly through life, always thinking ahead, always rushing. Yet that morning, as he sipped his coffee and glanced around the cafe, he found his eyes returning to her. There was a quiet dignity in her presence. Even though people brushed past her, talking loudly or bumping into her in the narrow aisle, she didn't flinch. She didn't raise her voice. She simply adjusted her bag and continued on, as if the small chaos of the world around her didn't matter at all. Curiosity nudged him. He told himself it was just curiosity, nothing more. Perhaps he wanted a break from his routine, a distraction from his own thoughts. He watched her as she ordered her coffee, noticing the way she smiled politely at the barista, the way she thanked the cashier with a quiet, sincere tone. There was a softness to her gestures that made him feel calm. The next day, he saw her again. She was in the same cafe, sitting by the window with a book open in front of her. She didn't seem to notice anyone around her. Her focus was entirely on the words printed on the page. He noticed the way she occasionally paused to sip her tea, her eyes reflecting thoughtfulness, as if she was living a story within the story she was reading. He wondered what her life was like. Did she work nearby? Did she live alone? What made her sit here every morning with such quiet determination?
He realized he didn't know a single thing about her, yet he found himself looking forward to these little glimpses into her day.
It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was a sense of connection, however distant. There was something comforting about seeing a familiar face, even if he had never spoken to her. He liked that. In a world so large and so loud, there was one person whose presence felt gentle and steady. The next encounter was different. He happened to be walking past the park where she often paused on her way to the cafe. She was sitting on a bench, feeding birds from a small bag of crumbs she had brought with her. Her movements were careful and deliberate, as if she had done this every day for years. The birds approached her without fear, hopping closer with each crumb she offered. There was patience in her actions, a kindness that was rare in the rush of the city. He stood there for a moment, pretending to tie his shoe, just to watch. It amazed him how someone could be so ordinary, yet radiate something so extraordinary. There was no rush, no sense of hurry, just a woman and her quiet compassion. People walked past them, busy with their lives. But she remained in her own world. He began noticing small things about her. How she always carried a reusable bag even when it wasn't necessary. How she always held the door for others, even when no one asked. How she seemed to listen to people's words, not just their voices, paying attention in a way that made others feel seen. These weren't grand gestures, nothing that would make headlines, but they left an impression on him. One morning, he accidentally dropped his notebook in the cafe. As he scrambled to pick it up, she bent down and handed it to him with a warm smile.
"You dropped this,"
she said softly. There was no judgment, no condescension, just simple kindness. He mumbled a thanks, feeling a little embarrassed but also oddly touched. That small interaction lingered in his mind throughout the day. He found himself thinking about her smile, the gentle way she had spoken, the feeling of unexpected comfort her presence had given him. It was strange how someone he didn't know could leave such a mark. Days passed, and he began noticing her more regularly. Not obsessively, but with a quiet awareness. She was always polite, always calm, always kind. And yet she carried herself with a strength that was not immediately visible. She didn't boast, didn't demand attention, but there was a steadiness to her that made him wonder what her story was. He started paying attention to her habits. She always ordered the same tea, always sat in the same spot by the window. She always left at the same time, walking with a measured pace. Life around her seemed chaotic and fast, but she moved like she was in sync with a slower, steadier rhythm. Then, one day, something unusual happened. The cafe was crowded, louder than usual, and a man at the next table started arguing with the barista over a mistake in his order. The tension in the air was sharp, uncomfortable. She didn't flinch. Instead, she quietly stood and approached the man, speaking softly but firmly. He didn't hear all the words, but he noticed the change in the man's expression. Within moments, the man's anger dissipated, and he left the cafe muttering under his breath. She returned to her seat as if nothing had happened, sipping her tea with the same calm composure.
He couldn't believe what he had seen. She had diffused a tense situation with nothing but words and presence.
He had expected her to shrink away to avoid confrontation, but she had faced it quietly, without drawing attention to herself. It was the first real hint that perhaps there was more to her than met the eye. From that moment on, he watched her with even more interest. He realized he didn't just find her kind or calm, but remarkable in a way that was subtle, almost invisible. She didn't need to prove herself, didn't seek recognition, yet she impacted the world around her quietly, powerfully. He started wondering about her life outside the cafe. Did she face struggles? Did she carry burdens that weren't visible? The idea that someone so ordinary in appearance could be carrying such depth fascinated him. He didn't want to intrude, but he wanted to understand, to see more of the world through her perspective. One evening, as he was leaving the cafe, he noticed her walking down the street, holding a small package. A child ran past them, almost bumping into her, and she smiled warmly, letting the child pass, without scolding. There was patience, grace, and an effortless kindness in her every movement. He realized he had been mistaken. There was nothing ordinary about her. She was extraordinary, in a way that didn't seek attention, in a way that didn't need to. He walked home that night with a strange mixture of admiration and curiosity. He didn't know her name, didn't know anything about her life, and yet she had made an impression stronger than anyone else in the city had in years. The ordinary woman next to him in the cafe, the one he had almost ignored at first, was slowly becoming unforgettable. And yet, despite all these observations, there was still a sense of mystery about her. She never spoke much about herself, never shared her story. Her life remained private, almost hidden, like a book whose cover you can see but whose pages are locked. The more he watched, the more questions he had. By the end of the week, he realized something important. Life is full of ordinary faces, ordinary people, moving through ordinary routines. But sometimes, someone appears in the simplest way, in a smile, a gesture, a quiet act of kindness, and changes the way you see the world. He didn't know her story yet, didn't know the full depth of her life, but he felt certain that there was something extraordinary, waiting to be discovered. He left the cafe that day with a sense of anticipation, wondering what the next encounter would reveal. And for the first time in a long time, he felt genuinely excited about something unpredictable, something real. Little did he know, the woman he had thought of as ordinary was hiding a secret, a part of her life that would soon shock him completely. And when that secret came to light, nothing about the ordinary mornings, the quiet cafe, or even the city streets would ever feel ordinary again. The days passed, and the narrator continued to notice the woman in subtle ways. She was always there, quietly going about her routine, yet now he could not help but pay closer attention. Something about her felt different from everyone else. It wasn't just her calm demeanor or her small acts of kindness. There was an energy in her, a sense of quiet control, that made him wonder if she carried more than he could see. He began to notice patterns in her behavior. On some mornings, she would carry an extra sandwich or coffee cup, placing it carefully on a bench in the park. At first, he thought it was for someone she was meeting, but he saw no one approach. Instead, birds would come, small squirrels would pause nearby, and she would smile softly, talking to them as if they understood every word. It was a small act, simple yet deliberate, and it made the narrator wonder about her sensitivity toward the world around her. One afternoon, he noticed her leaving the cafe in a hurry, glancing around as if she was making sure no one was following her. There was a tension in her movements he hadn't seen before. Her eyes darted from one direction to another, but she quickly relaxed when she thought no one was looking. She seemed ordinary again, blending in perfectly with the crowd, yet he could not shake the feeling that something significant had happened, or was about to happen. Curiosity grew in him, mixed with a strange sense of worry. He wanted to know more, but also feared intruding. He began following small clues. He noticed how she occasionally spoke on the phone in hushed tones, words clipped and careful. She never laughed loudly, never shared her emotions openly with anyone. And yet, there was a strength in her posture, a confidence in the way she navigated the crowded streets. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky orange, he saw her in the park again. This time, she was helping an elderly man with a heavy grocery bag. She didn't hesitate or ask questions. She lifted the bag and walked with him, matching his slow pace, making sure he was steady. The man smiled, grateful, and she simply nodded before walking away. There was no pride, no recognition, only the act itself. It wasn't a single act that impressed him, but the collection of them. The way she treated strangers, the care she showed for even the smallest things.
There was a consistency to her actions that suggested a life of discipline, of hidden responsibility.
She moved with purpose even when no one was watching, and the narrator began to realize that she was not as ordinary as she appeared. He began noticing her interactions with the people around her. A colleague at the cafe spoke highly of her one morning, praising her patience and willingness to help with difficult tasks. A neighbor mentioned how she had helped fix a leaky pipe for someone who could not afford a plumber, and once he overheard her talking on the phone about arranging assistance for someone in need, her voice calm and professional, giving instructions with ease. These small glimpses left him both impressed and puzzled. Who was this woman? What was her life like when she wasn't in the cafe or the park? He tried to imagine her at home, perhaps cooking quietly, reading, or sitting alone in thought, but the image felt incomplete, as though he was missing crucial pieces of the puzzle. Then one day, something happened that shook his assumptions even further. He was sitting in the cafe when he noticed her helping a young girl who had dropped her books. The girl was crying, overwhelmed by the mess of scattered pages. Without hesitation, the woman knelt down, gently picking up the books, speaking soothingly to the child. She straightened the books with care, making sure the girl's favorite notebook was at the top. The girl's tears stopped, replaced with a shy smile, and she ran off. The narrator watched, amazed at the effortless way she had handled the situation. But it wasn't just the act that caught him. It was the way she carried herself afterward. There was no rush, no sense of self-congratulation, no desire for attention.
She returned to her seat, calm and composed, yet her eyes seemed to hold a depth he could not understand.
Something had shaped her, something beyond ordinary life, and he could feel it. The narrator's curiosity grew into quiet obsession. He began noting small details that others would never notice. The way she avoided crowded places when possible, choosing quiet streets even when it added time to her journey. The way she carried a small notebook in her bag, occasionally glancing at it, making careful notes. The way she seemed aware of her surroundings at all times, noticing small things that others overlooked. One day, he followed her after she left the cafe. He didn't intend to intrude, only to observe and maybe learn a little more about her. She walked calmly, almost gracefully through the streets. She entered a small building, one he hadn't noticed before, and disappeared inside. He waited outside for a few minutes, unsure whether to leave or continue watching.
After a while, she emerged, carrying a large bag filled with neatly organized items.
She didn't seem hurried or tense, but she moved with purpose, as if she had completed an important task.
The narrator realized he had never seen anyone manage their life with such quiet precision.
There was an unseen strength in her, a discipline that suggested she carried responsibility beyond what he could imagine. The ordinary woman he had first noticed in the cafe was becoming extraordinary in his mind, and each observation only deepened the mystery. The next day, he decided to try speaking to her more directly. He waited until she sat at her usual spot, and then approached with cautious curiosity. "Good morning," he said softly. "I see you here often. Do you live nearby?" She looked up at him, her expression calm but slightly guarded. "Good morning," she replied, her voice soft but steady. "Yes, I live a few blocks away. I like starting my day here." They exchanged a few more words, small talk about the weather, about the cafe, about nothing significant. But even in those few sentences, he noticed the care in her tone, the thoughtfulness in her responses. She listened, really listened, and spoke only what was necessary, never wasting words. He left the conversation with more questions than answers.
She was polite, yes, but she revealed nothing of herself.
And yet, he felt he had seen enough to know that there was much more beneath the surface. Days turned into weeks, and he continued observing her, learning her habits, noting the small acts of kindness that seemed ordinary to everyone else, but extraordinary to him. He noticed her helping strangers, assisting those in need, quietly intervening in difficult situations without drawing attention. Each act was small, almost invisible, but it revealed a character that was strong, resilient, and compassionate. Then came the day when he saw something that truly shocked him. The cafe was crowded as usual, and a man outside appeared to be struggling with heavy boxes. Without hesitation, she stepped forward, lifting the boxes with surprising strength, guiding the man to his destination. What caught him off guard wasn't just her strength, but her confidence, her ability to take control in a situation where others would hesitate. She did it effortlessly, calmly, as if this were routine for her. The narrator watched in awe. He had assumed she was ordinary, just another woman going about her day. Yet here she was, capable of handling challenges that would overwhelm many people. And the most surprising part was that she did it without seeking recognition, without making anyone notice. She simply did what needed to be done, and then returned to her seat, as if nothing had happened. He realized that he had been mistaken all along. Ordinary was not the right word to describe her. She was disciplined, strong, and wise beyond what anyone could see at first glance. She carried a hidden life, a private world that he could only guess at, filled with responsibilities, struggles, and perhaps even sacrifices that remained invisible to the casual observer. That evening, he left the cafe with a strange sense of wonder. He didn't know her story yet, didn't know what life had shaped her into this remarkable woman, but he felt certain that one day he would learn the truth. And when that day came, it would change everything he thought he knew about the ordinary people around him, and perhaps even about life itself. He walked home slowly, replaying the day's observations in his mind. Each small act, each quiet intervention, each moment of patience and strength revealed a woman who was far from ordinary. He felt a mixture of curiosity, admiration, and an almost restless need to understand. Who was she really? And what part of her life had remained hidden from the world, invisible to everyone except perhaps those who paid close enough attention to notice?
As he drifted into sleep that night, he couldn't shake the feeling that the ordinary woman next to him in the cafe was keeping a secret.
A secret that would shock him when revealed. And for the first time, he realized that ordinary appearances could be deceiving, that someone who seemed quiet, simple, or unremarkable could be carrying a story full of courage, intelligence, and depth, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to be discovered. And he was beginning to wonder if he was ready for that moment. The days after the incident at the cafe, the narrator couldn't stop thinking about her. The woman he had once considered ordinary now seemed completely extraordinary. He found himself watching for her during his morning routine, noticing the way she moved through the streets, the way she greeted familiar faces, the subtle confidence in her steps. But more than anything, he wondered what secret she carried, what life she led beyond the quiet moments he had observed. One afternoon, as he walked through a quieter part of the city, he saw her again. She was crouched beside a small alley, speaking softly to a man whose face he couldn't see clearly. From a distance he could tell she was guiding him, pointing toward a safer route, her gestures calm but firm. When the man nodded and walked away, she straightened, brushing her hands lightly on her coat, as if nothing had happened. The narrator's curiosity became almost impossible to control. He realized he had to learn more, but he didn't know how. She moved with a quiet authority, interacting with people in ways that suggested responsibility, experience, and knowledge far beyond what she showed in the cafe or park. He began thinking about the small clues he had noticed before, the careful way she kept her notebook, the hushed phone calls, the way she always seemed aware of her surroundings. Everything he had observed now hinted at a life that was hidden, organized, and important. Later that week, the narrator had an unexpected chance to learn a little more. He overheard a conversation between two baristas at the cafe. "Did you hear about her?" one whispered. "She helped coordinate the relief effort last month. People were saying she saved a lot of families from serious trouble." The narrator's heart skipped a beat. Relief effort? Families? Saved? He felt a mix of awe and confusion. This was the first time he had heard concrete evidence that her life was far from ordinary. Yet she had never mentioned it to anyone. She carried out her actions quietly, without boasting, without seeking recognition, as if helping others was simply her responsibility. That evening, he walked home with a new sense of determination. He needed to see more, to understand what kind of life she led when no one was watching. He began paying even closer attention, noting every movement, every small act of kindness, every subtle display of skill or courage. One morning, he followed her at a respectful distance. She entered a building he had never noticed before. Through the large windows, he saw her moving with precision, arranging boxes, speaking quietly to people, giving instructions. There was a calm authority in her voice that he had never heard in the casual words she used at the cafe. He realized she was managing something important, something serious, and that her ordinary exterior was only a small part of her reality. He watched for hours, seeing her interact with dozens of people, each exchange purposeful, each movement deliberate. She solved problems quickly, guided others with patience, and maintained control over situations that could easily have turned chaotic. The narrator was stunned. The ordinary woman he had admired for her quiet kindness was capable of so much more than he could have imagined. That evening, he couldn't stop thinking about her. How could someone so calm, so quiet, carry such responsibility and skill? He remembered the small gestures he had noticed, the way she helped the elderly man, the child with dropped books, the man struggling with boxes, and realized they were all part of a larger pattern. She had spent her life helping others, not just in isolated acts but in a structured, determined way.
A few days later, he got another unexpected glimpse into her life.
He saw her helping a young family with groceries, guiding them through a busy intersection safely, speaking softly to calm a crying child.
As she walked away, the mother of the child caught her hand, squeezing it briefly in gratitude. The narrator noticed the slight smile she gave in return, almost as if she accepted the gratitude but didn't need it. Her strength and compassion were so effortless that it seemed natural to her, yet extraordinary to anyone who witnessed it. The narrator began to wonder what had shaped her. Had she always been like this? Or had life forced her to become disciplined, resourceful, and strong? There was a quiet intensity in her eyes, a resilience that suggested she had faced challenges no one else could imagine. And yet, she remained humble, modest, and kind. One evening, the narrator found himself walking behind her again. She entered a small office building and disappeared inside. Curious, he waited nearby, careful not to intrude. After some time, she emerged, carrying a small folder and several bags neatly packed. She moved with the same calm, purposeful rhythm, but there was a subtle tension in her shoulders, a weight he had never noticed before.
He realized then that her life was not easy.
There was responsibility, perhaps even danger, that she carried quietly. Everything she did, every small act of kindness, was deliberate, and yet came at a cost. She managed her world with skill and intelligence, but the narrator understood that she bore burdens most people would never imagine. The next morning, he finally decided to speak to her again carefully, hoping to learn a little more. "I saw you yesterday," he said softly.
You seemed very busy.
Do you help people often?" "Everyone in the front way. You work wildly and—" "Sometimes," she replied. "I try to do what I can. Oh, that's all anyone can do." Her answer was simple, but it spoke volumes. She didn't brag or explain. She didn't ask for admiration. She simply acted, quietly, and with purpose. The narrator realized that everything he had seen, the acts of kindness, the calm control, the quiet strength, was part of a life committed to helping others. As the days passed, he noticed her managing more complex situations. She coordinated small efforts to help people in need, guided individuals through difficult problems, and made decisions that affected others' lives. She was calm under pressure, thinking clearly, solving problems efficiently. Yet she never drew attention to herself, never asked for credit, never allowed anyone to see the effort it took. The narrator felt a mixture of admiration and astonishment. He had assumed she was ordinary, had assumed her life was simple, and yet every observation revealed the opposite. There was a hidden depth to her, a hidden responsibility, a hidden courage. B.C. had mastered the art of living quietly, yet impactfully. Then came a moment that truly shocked him. He saw her handle a sudden emergency, a minor accident on the street. A cyclist had fallen, and people were panicking. Without hesitation, she rushed forward, assessing the situation quickly. She calmed the cyclist, directed traffic, and helped others assist without causing chaos. She was composed, confident, and precise. The scene could have ended badly, but because of her, it passed safely. The narrator was stunned. She wasn't just kind and helpful. She was capable of managing crises, of taking control when others faltered. She carried a skill set, a calm authority, and a sense of responsibility that was rare in ordinary life. He realized that her secret was not just about kindness or discipline. It was about capability, courage, and intelligence hidden behind a quiet, unassuming exterior. That night, he reflected on everything he had seen. Her life was a combination of compassion, skill, and strength, carefully balanced and carefully hidden. She had chosen to live quietly, to appear ordinary, yet her actions spoke of extraordinary dedication and resilience. He understood that her secret was not something trivial or ordinary. It was her entire approach to life. The narrator felt a growing respect and admiration for her. He realized that the ordinary woman he had noticed weeks ago was living a life full of responsibility, courage, and care. Each small act, each quiet intervention, each thoughtful decision revealed a woman who was extraordinary not because she sought attention, but because she chose to help others without anyone noticing. And yet, despite all that he had observed, he knew there was still more to discover. There were still mysteries about her past, about the experiences that shaped her into someone so disciplined and capable. He could feel that one day, the full truth of her life would be revealed, and that revelation would shock him completely. He walked home that night, thinking about her, about the way she moved through the world with calm purpose, and about the hidden life she carried in plain sight. He realized that ordinary was no longer a word that fit her. She was extraordinary in ways he could barely understand, yet he knew he was only seeing a fraction of the story. And as he drifted to sleep, he felt a mixture of anticipation and awe. The ordinary woman next to him, the one who had first caught his attention with small acts of kindness, was now a source of fascination, respect, and wonder. Her secret life was partially revealed. And yet he sensed that the most shocking part was still ahead, something that would make him see her, and perhaps the world, in an entirely new light. The narrator could no longer ignore the curiosity that had grown over the past weeks. Each encounter, each small observation, each act of quiet kindness had built a picture in his mind of someone extraordinary, someone far beyond the ordinary life she displayed. And yet, he still did not know the full truth. He felt he had to learn more, not just from observation, but directly. One morning he saw her leaving the cafe, carrying her usual bag and her calm composure. Summoning courage, he approached her. "Excuse me," he said softly, trying to keep his voice steady. "I hope I'm not intruding, but I've noticed you over the past weeks, and I can't help but wonder, what is it you do?" She paused, looking at him. For a moment, her calm expression didn't change, and the narrator feared he had overstepped. Then, slowly, a small smile appeared. "I suppose it's time you knew," she said quietly, almost as if she had been expecting him to ask. Curiosity and anticipation mixed with nervousness. They walked together, not too far from the cafe, to a quieter street. She began to speak, her words measured, calm, and precise. "My life, it's not as ordinary as it seems. I've spent years helping people, managing situations most people don't notice. I coordinate assistance for families in need, organize resources for emergencies, and quietly step in when others cannot." The narrator listened intently, his eyes widening with each word. He had suspected she had a hidden life, but he had never imagined it would be this significant. Every small act he had noticed, the sandwiches left on benches, the help with groceries, the calm handling of minor accidents, was part of a much larger life, a life dedicated to service and responsibility. "I don't tell anyone," she continued. "I don't seek recognition because the work itself matters more than the praise. People are often struggling quietly, and I try to be there in whatever way I can, without drawing attention." The narrator felt a surge of respect and admiration. He had watched her handle situations with skill and patience, but hearing her describe the depth of her life made him understand just how remarkable she truly was. She wasn't just kind or disciplined. She carried the weight of others' struggles, often sacrificing her own comfort to help them. She led him to a small community center, a place he had never noticed before. Inside, he saw evidence of her hidden world. Shelves neatly stacked with supplies, charts, and notes organized with care. Lists of families, names, and schedules. Volunteers moved efficiently, following her instructions. She gave directions calmly, correcting mistakes without anger, encouraging without dominating. She was in charge, yet she moved as if she were part of the team, not above it. The narrator watched, amazed. Every small action he had noticed, the way she spoke to children, the care for elderly people, the calm authority in emergencies, was just a fragment of this life she had built. She had created an entire world of quiet service, a life dedicated to helping others in ways most people would never see. He asked, almost hesitantly, "How? How did you start this? How did you manage to do so much quietly without anyone noticing?" She paused, her gaze thoughtful.
Life teaches you lessons, sometimes harsh ones.
I've seen people struggle, families suffer, and I realize that small acts organized carefully can make a difference. I don't need recognition. I just need to know I've helped, even in ways invisible to the world. The narrator felt a lump in his throat. He had imagined her as ordinary, had assumed her life was simple, and yet she had been carrying responsibilities, solving problems, and helping countless people all along. Every interaction he had witnessed, the calmness, the patience, the quiet interventions, made sense now. Her ordinary appearance was a choice, a way to move through the world unnoticed while making a profound impact. Over the next few hours, she showed him more. They visited several homes where she had arranged food and support for families in difficult situations. She guided him gently, explaining how each act of kindness, each small resource, could change someone's day, or even their life. The narrator realized that the ordinary woman he had admired from afar was not just extraordinary, she was remarkable, powerful in ways most people could never imagine.
At one home, they met a mother who had been struggling to care for 3 children after losing her job.
The narrator watched as the woman calmly reassured her, organized food, and helped make a plan for the coming weeks. The mother's gratitude was quiet, almost overwhelmed, yet the woman remained composed, offering guidance, without ever asking for thanks. He realized that her strength was not in grand gestures or dramatic heroics. It was in consistency, in reliability, in the quiet determination to make life better for those who could not help themselves. She carried this hidden world alone for so long, never seeking admiration, never demanding recognition. As the day turned to evening, they returned to the street outside the cafe, where it had all begun. The narrator felt a mixture of awe, respect, and humility. "I had no idea," he said quietly. "I thought you were just ordinary. I never imagined all this."
You've been living a life I couldn't even guess at.
She smiled softly, her eyes reflecting a mixture of understanding and kindness. Most people never notice.
And that's fine. It's not about being seen. It's about doing what needs to be done. That's all that matters. He realized then that the secret she had kept was not about mystery or danger. It was about choice, about living quietly, purposefully, and compassionately, in a world that often values attention over action. Her life was extraordinary, not because she wanted it to be, but because she chose to make a difference every day. Over the next weeks, the narrator spent more time with her, learning about her work and the lives she touched. He began to understand the depth of her commitment, the sacrifices she made, and the incredible discipline required to manage such responsibility. And yet, she remained humble, approachable, and kind, a reminder that greatness often exists quietly, away from recognition. He also noticed how she carried herself in ordinary moments. She still visited the cafe, still walked through the park, still offered small gestures of kindness to strangers. But now he saw these acts as part of the whole, a reflection of a life devoted to helping others, carefully balanced with her own quiet routines. One evening, as they walked together through the city streets, he finally asked the question that had been in his mind for weeks. Why keep it hidden? Why not let people know what you do? She looked at him, thoughtful. Because the work isn't about me. It's about the people who need help, the situations that require attention. Recognition doesn't change that. I don't need to be noticed. I just need to act. Her words stayed with him long after she had gone. He realized that she had not only been hiding her life from others, but also from him. In a way, she allowed him to see fragments, hints, and small acts, but the full truth had been reserved until he was ready. And now that he had witnessed it, now that he had learned her secret, he felt a profound respect that went beyond admiration. He understood that ordinary appearances are often deceptive. The woman he had thought of as ordinary was extraordinary in every sense. She had a life full of purpose, courage, and compassion, quietly carried out without need for acknowledgement. And in that realization he found not only inspiration, but a new perspective on life itself. He walked home that night with a sense of awe. He had seen the hidden world of someone he had once overlooked, and it had changed the way he viewed ordinary people, ordinary gestures, and even ordinary days.
Life, he realized, was full of hidden stories, quiet heroes, and unnoticed courage.
And sometimes, the most shocking and inspiring stories come from the people who seem least likely to carry them. From that day forward, he no longer thought of her as ordinary. Every smile she gave, every calm gesture, every quiet act of kindness was now magnified by the knowledge of her life, her dedication, and her hidden strength. He felt fortunate to have glimpsed it, even partially, and knew that this ordinary-looking woman had left an extraordinary mark on his life. And though she would continue to live quietly, helping others without seeking attention, the narrator carried her secret with him, changed forever by the knowledge of what it truly meant to be remarkable in the most understated way. For him, the ordinary woman next to him would never again be ordinary. She was a quiet force of courage, patience, and unwavering commitment. A secret that shocked him not because it was sensational, but because it was real, and it had quietly shaped the lives of so many without anyone ever noticing.